Hi, my name is Vilmos Weiler. I'm a journalist at Telex.hu in Hungary, and I have been writing about battery sector for 3 years. So listen to this story.
Welcome to the Visegrad Insight Podcast.
We bring you global experts on the future of democracy, security, and economy.
The leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Hosted by editors of Visegrad Insight.
Powered by Respublika Foundation from Warsaw, Poland.
Does the European Union have a really intelligent strategy regarding the future of automotive sector that just doesn't work? And Hungary has a dumb strategy that actually proves to be working. Stay tuned for this episode with my guest, Vilmos Weiler. My name is Wojciech Przybylski. I'm editor-in-chief of Visegrad Insight. Vilmos, thank you very much for joining our podcast and the conversation around future of Europe from the Hungarian perspective, or from the Polish and Hungarian perspective. And I'll go straight to the point. There is a big debate about European competitiveness, but also about Europe's economic security, where the automotive sector and the whole strategy of Europe that was based on the growth generated by that sector is challenged by a number of factors, including technological progress, including the whole green transition and the climate response to the climate change and the global warming, the Western world, but also the global South wants to tackle in many ways through innovation. And there is a political ambition, specifically of China, to dominate the manufacturing and dominate in innovation. Now, Europe is struggling. It's facing an uphill battle also with the US tariffs and so on. But there are some countries, and specifically this is where we point to Hungary, which try avenues which are, well, at least puzzling us. And we hear of mega investment from China into batteries, automotive sector, the biggest in Europe. And we want to unpack what's behind this strategy, what makes sense and what doesn't. Vilmos, could you just first paint a bigger picture of what this Chinese investment, mega factories, multi-billion projects actually are, and what they're worth for building up Hungarian economic security and European economic security, perhaps?
Yeah, I would start with European Union and its strategy on green goals and green transition, because the EU decided to ban cars run by gas in 10 years, but they didn't really have a strategy how to go with that transition. So they really just told car manufacturers that they should start producing EVs now, and they didn't really have a strategy for batteries. And there are no European companies who are able to produce batteries in large quantities. So there was a plan that Europe will build up companies in that sector, but it didn't succeed. So they started Northvolt, they had other startups, and the plan was that they will replace batteries from the Far East, but they couldn't succeed. They were just failures. And so that's the first point. So I think there was a mistake in this European strategy, because if you only have to make green cars, but you don't have to use European batteries, you will start using batteries from the Far East, and the European auto or car manufacturers started to import batteries from Korean and Chinese companies who were doing it for decades. And that's how this investment wave in Hungary started, that two large Korean battery manufacturers came to Hungary, Samsung and SK, and they started building gigafactories in Hungary in the late 2010s. So they, I think, Samsung invested 7 billion euros in Hungary, SK invested 3 or 4 billion euros in Hungary. So these are really giga investments, and they they built up huge battery factories here. And then actually the third one is in Poland. It's LG Chem, and they have a plant in southern Poland. So these three Korean battery producers came to Europe, but then there was a problem. They had a competition from China because Chinese companies are working cheaper. They have another technology which now seems to work better. And then European car manufacturers started to buy batteries also from Chinese companies, from Chinese producers. And at point, these Korean battery manufacturers started to lose their clients because they were buying from Chinese producers, and now they are also investing in Europe. They are also building up battery factories here in Europe. There are also investments in Hungary. There are also in Portugal, but most of them are here in Hungary. So now we have in Hungary a lot of battery factories, actually 5 or 6 very large. 2 of them are Koreans, the rest is Chinese, and they produce this for whole Europe. And there are no European battery producers now.
So that places Hungary as Hungarian economy in really a great competitive advantage, it seems. At first sight, it looks at least like Hungary benefits from this position against all automotive sector in Europe enormously. And it seems, it should translate to an economic boom for the country, don't you think?
Well, it's a question how much we benefit from this, because actually these are really huge factories, but they are running with not that much workforce as car factories, because a battery manufacturing is automated process, so they don't really need that many workers, and they often in Hungary work with the foreign workforce. So people from Southern Asia or Eastern Asia come to Hungary and they work in these factories. So actually, I don't think, or economics don't say we have that much benefit from that. Or if we will have it on the long run. But now they don't really have research and development here in Hungary. They only make manufacturing, and they do everything else back home in Korea or in China.
So it turns out that there isn't actually the output for the, as you say, research and development and upgrading the position of Hungary. It's merely giving land and allowing
and energy,
essentially, and getting energy bill for those companies, but then the added value, the top of the value chain, is actually with the companies that are foreign companies, and they are not sharing or they're not producing an advantage for Hungary.
Yeah, so the added value now is very low. All economists say, and so now we don't really benefit much from them, and we also, like Hungary, also gives a lot of state subsidies to these companies. So it's Hungary already invested more or less 5 billion euros in this sector, which these companies received. And I don't really see how they paid it back in taxes, in wages, etc. But I think it's I wouldn't say it's a good thing and a bad thing, because 3 years ago, when I started writing about this topic, then I spoke with the German experts, and they said, okay, you should forget Samsung and SK, because Northvolt will be much better than them. And now Northvolt is bankrupt; it's closed. So what they said back then didn't turn out to be true. So I wouldn't say Hungarian strategy is really bad, because the Hungarian strategy was to invite more and more and more and more battery manufacturers to come to Hungary, and they didn't really make requirements. They just gave them very huge subsidies, and also the regulation is very loose in Hungary. So they can do whatever want. What we say here in Hungary, that Koreans always say that within their factory, it's not Hungary, it's Korea. So they do there whatever they want. They do things according to what they learned it back there in Korea. So so Hungary really started it in let me put it in this way, in a quantitative approach. That they wanted to get more and more investment, and now we are now getting to the point where these factories are all built up, and where the question is whether at the long run they will turn out to be good investments or bad investments.
Yeah, and I can imagine, as you say, you've been writing about this topic for the private media, but for the public in the public interest. I wonder what's the public opinion about these companies. I mean, on one hand, it seems like fantastic, big investment, big candies from the point of view of electoral campaign and from the government point of view. But I recall also a number of protests in the locations where the Chinese factories were supposed to be located. And there was a public unrest, actually from the local communities also, who not necessarily wanted that. Where the public opinion situates itself versus this new type of economy, gigafactories projects.
It's funny because the public opinion is terrible on that issue, and it's not because of China, what you suggested, but because of the Korean companies who came first. Because Samsung so when Samsung came in, nobody knew what the battery factory was. Nobody in Hungary knew that, and Samsung didn't really communicate with the public. And then it turned out that they do really, really terrible things within the factory. So they were letting toxic material out of the factory into the air, into the water. They let toxic materials inbreed their workers. So the workers working there were inbreeding this cathode material for years, and that's absolutely unhealthy. And when all this turned out, the public opinion in Hungary, when people realized this is happening, everyone thought, okay, battery manufacturing is poisonous. And now the majority of people in Hungary think it's poisonous. The whole industry is poisonous, and all the factories are poisonous in the same way. And this is why many people oppose this industry. And actually, the worst experience was with Samsung, and it's not a Chinese company; it's a Korean company. And they really thought back then that they can do whatever they want, and they did whatever they wanted because the Hungarian government didn't really want to regulate them. They didn't really want to say, okay, this is not going well, etc. So the problem in Hungary started not with the Chinese, but with the Korean companies. And actually, those who have experience in this field say that Chinese companies are more cooperative and more able to make compromises than Korean companies. So it's it's a bit funny that people think that we have problem with the Chinese companies, but it's actually more with the Koreans.
Well, that's interesting, but on the sense of security, personal security, environmental security, I can understand that there is this immediate urge of the population, especially located close to the factories, to take action, protest. But how much do they matter, and how much any of the public opinion mattered in the development of those companies so far? Or they are being managed and eventually they die out, and the companies do not, or the government do not really take care of these aspects, and they prioritize simply doing business.
Yeah, the protests, they died out because the government really didn't want to talk with them, and they didn't want to make compromises and or didn't give anything to the protesters, so they died out. Actually, there are a few dozens of people in Hungary in the countryside protesting against these investments, but the public opinion changed because of these protests, and the government they saw it, and they also changed their approach. They first changed the way they communicated it, and then they made the regulation a bit more strict, not that loose. They are not enforcing their own regulations, so it's still happening that companies. So like Samsung, the biggest battery factory, it lost its permit to produce batteries in Hungary. It lost its permits on 2 months ago, but it's still working. So they are still producing batteries. So actually, Hungary is not enforcing the regulation, but now it's a bit there is a bit other approach than like 2-3 years ago, where they often they simply said, okay, you can do whatever you want. They do not say this anymore, but it's still a bit like whatever you do. Yeah.
Let's go back to the question of European Union and also the regulatory environment in which the European Commission has and the European Union Council of Ministers approved the new format of tariffs on electric vehicles, where the demand is to produce the local content and to make the local content. Now, I am not an expert, and I'm hearing different opinions. On one side, that exactly the kind of investment in Hungary will allow for taking in the production from Hungary as a local content to the electric vehicle supply chain and value chain within Europe and treat it as European. Understanding how the production goes on, as you described, there is a lot of actually import, including labor from those countries, from the third countries to the European Union. And the other opinion is that exactly because there is too much of external input still in the production line, this will not comply with the EU regulation, and Hungary will not be able to benefit from it as a local hub within Europe that creates this value and generates input and also in whatever way profits this way as an economy. Where does where's the knowledge? Where are the facts that you managed to establish?
I'm not an expert on tariffs, but as far as I know, not even the European Union knows what's the regulation or what's the goal, and they are still in talks with China about this, and also with Korea about this issue. So what I hear in Hungary that even the companies that are coming to Hungary, like Chinese companies, Korean companies, they don't know what will be the European Union regulation, and they are preparing for it. Like Chinese companies say, okay, they are coming to Hungary because in case Europe will introduce new tariffs, in case it will have stricter regulations, they are bringing manufacturing here to Hungary so that they don't have to. So that they can't apply the tariffs on their products. So, but I think they still don't know what's the case, and they also say they still don't know what's the case. So I think they are playing multiple cards in the same time, because they produce these products at home, cars and batteries at home, and they also build up production here in Europe in case there are going to be tariffs, and they also build up their whole supply chain in Hungary, like Koreans did it very much. Like there are 2 big Korean battery cell factories in Hungary, and they have like 30-40 other Korean companies working for these 2-3 big companies, and the Chinese make the same. So they build up the whole supply chain here in Hungary. So that they can say, okay, we are producing here in Europe. But I don't know, I think my opinion is the European Union could ban this. They could say, okay, it's not European, but I think it's still not decided, or they still don't know what will happen.
Well, the regulation is rather fresh and very innovative, but as you said, also very complicated. And I think not everyone in the European Union are fully on board of the mechanism and the type of nitty-gritty, very intelligent, but then again complex issues, and that's the time will tell. Anyway, this is a fascinating topic, I think. And my last question where I wanted to touch to what extent this is relevant in the political debate, electoral race, as a model of future growth. I remember Viktor Orban was on a number of previous campaigns campaigning for the middle class of Hungary, where exactly building up the middle class was based on the premise that Hungary used to be and still is important car making supplier, car making part of the value chain in car making, mostly for the German automotive sector. Now it seems many things are shifting, and as you described, there is also this aspect of labor, and the middle class is not so developed here. So maybe I'm just, I'm shooting in the wrong spot. Maybe there isn't even a topic in a campaign. But if that evokes some emotions and has any relevance, would you say there is a strategy of the government or the opposition around this?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this automotive sector or these car making companies, they are very popular in Hungary because it's the same story as in Poland, that after the communism fell, there was a large unemployment, large poverty, and then these German automotive companies came in. They built up their factories, and people worked there, and they earned much more than they earned in other sectors. So they are very popular, and many people who work in this sector, they feel like this was a sector where they could get into the middle class. They really have higher wages than people in other sectors. So it's very popular, and the Hungarian government, Orban, they say that we need the battery factories in order to keep the car factories, so the automotive sector. And I don't think how many people believe it, and I don't think to what extent that's true. I think to a given extent it's true, because BMW or Mercedes, they say, okay, we need these battery factories, we need these factories close to our own factories. So because there is this work local, and it's good that they don't have to transport the batteries, thousands of kilometers. So in a way, I think it could work, but the problem is that not even the car sector is doing well in Hungary. So they are also firing people. Like we have Audi, they are firing people. We have Mercedes, they said they will hire 3,000 people, but they are not really hiring now. So it's not really going well neither. And I think what the opposition could say is that this battery idea wasn't that good, but they won't criticize the car companies because they are very popular. So like, for example, there is BYD, it's a Chinese company. They are building a factory in southern Hungary in Szeged. It's a city with opposition leadership, so it's absolutely opposition-led city, and they are supporting BYD, and they said the public support for it is over 90%. So more than 90% of the population of Szeged is willing to have car factory there, even if it's Chinese. So I think there is this weird split on that people love car factories and they hate battery factories, but they have to make compromise, or it's the question how we make a compromise, whether they have to come together or whether we could have only one of them and the other not. Yeah, this is it.
And that's all from this week's episode of the Visegrad Insight Podcast, bringing you the leading voices from Central Europe and on Central Europe.
Make sure to subscribe, and we'll be in touch next week.